Hi, my name's Nana Asari Ponsem. I'm a peer tutor at the Recovery College, and today I'm going to be talking with my colleague Siobhan about mental health and relationships. It's quite a big topic, and so this is a bite size at half an hour. If at any point you feel uncomfortable or concerned, take a break and come back to it. I got into doing this kind of relationship mental health workshops because I used to work in secondary schools and I used to deliver sub workshops on conflict resolution, and that's got a lot to do with relationships. So when this topic came up, became very interested as well.
Hi, my name's Siobhan Finnegan and I'm an occupational therapist by profession, and I work here at the Recovery College supporting the delivery of courses. I decided to do this little mini course on relationships because I think it's a really big area, and I'm particularly interested from both a personal and professional perspective on how the environment impact us, how we see ourselves, and how we are in the world. And that environment can be physical, you know, how we get to move around. It can be also political, it can be through the media, how we are reflected back in the media, and it can be in intimate relationships as well, how people respond to us and how we respond to them. So that's you know, quite a big area to condense into a small subject, but I hope that you get something useful out of this today. And if there are at any moments something that comes up that you didn't expect to happen, we've got a list of resources at the end of the video. Hopefully you'll be able to access them, but you can always contact us here or speak to your doctor, and hopefully we'll see you in the Zoom session where we can expand on the things we've discussed today.
Hi everyone, my name is Asha. I'll be doing the voiceover recordings throughout this video. I am a peer tutor like Nana at the Recovery College, and at some point in this video I will also be sharing my own personal experience of mental health and relationships.
Okay, so thanks for joining us today at the Recovery College. Today we're going to be talking about quite a big topic, which is mental health and relationships. We're going to talk about relationships that are safe and relationships that are not so safe, and we'll have a chance to look into that further in the Zoom sessions.
That's right, Nana. We are hoping to provide an introduction to get people to just begin to think about relationships, using some different ideas that they may not have come across before. And also we're quite aware that it could bring some very sensitive things up for people. They might find themselves being a little bit triggered with things that they hadn't really considered before. So if that happens, make sure that you take a break. You can always speak to us here, you can always call us here, because what we hope to do is just to begin to start a process that we are planning to take forward in our new term in autumn, and we're going to do a much more in-depth in-house workshop and course that will really allow us to explore some of the things that come up today in much greater detail.
So what do we mean by relationship? Well, it is the way in which two or more people, ideas or things are connected. Family, friends, healthcare, for example. Can you think of any more? So what do we mean when we say relationships that feel safe? Well, in this context, in general, when we say that first, you want to be in a relationship where you can be yourself, you feel you're not being judged, you feel you're confident to share things that mean a lot to you without, having any fear, and that the other person accepts you for what you are, and that you're not trying to be influenced by them in any way. And that's what you would hope is a safe relationship to be in with someone.
Following on from what Asha has described on the screen, we're going to have a little talk ourselves about how we interpret some of those things in our relationships and what feels safe and feels unsafe. So Nana, what things do make you feel safe in a relationship?
I feel safe when I can be myself, talk about things that I want to be spoken about. Don't have to hide what I'm really feeling.
Yeah, that's a big thing about hiding what you're feeling. Because I suppose actually even when you say that, I can sort of think when people get into that flow, your breathing changes, you're sort of less tense in your body. So there is a real feeling of sort of safety as well. And I was thinking as well, I agree with you there. I suppose it's when the conversation flows, and I always find if I'm not having to sort of over-explain myself too much. But there's a conversation, I think it was through one of the Black Lives Matter discussions, and you know when someone can sort of simply express something they've experienced and think, oh yeah, we know, you know. So that person has an understanding of what you've, so you don't have to sort of say this and this, because that could be quite wearing. So
just being understood from saying
minimal things.
And not being judged, and just somebody just listening rather than giving advice, just being listened to, and I feel safe.
You guys can maybe at home think about some of the things that we've said, maybe sort of name some people that you feel close to that, you know, make you feel quite safe in some of the ways that we've discussed. Or even if you can't think of anyone off the top of your head, there might be someone in the past. You know, there could have been a school teacher or a friend or a relative that you felt you could actually be yourself with. So yeah, that might be something to think about. And it's quite a good grounding exercise, I find, when you can put someone in mind that you sort of felt comfortable with, because we're always going to come up against, you know, some sort of friction, I think, and so that allows you to sort of feel a bit more
relaxed. And we'll talk about this more in the course, going to more.
I think as well, because we're doing something quite remotely, I'm sort of mindful of thinking, let's focus on those safe relationships. Other things will come up for you that we might be able to work through a little bit on the Zoom, but for now, definitely think, if you can think about people that make you feel safe, that'd be a really good starting point.
Mental health and relationships can be quite a complex subject, because mental health on its own has many different variations, as does relationships. Also, the dynamics can vary. For example, a relationship can be strained due to someone dealing with an ongoing mental health condition, or likewise, vice versa, someone's mental health can be compromised because of a very difficult or very stressful relationship. I know this to be true for me and the relationship with my sister. Because even though we are the same two people, what we go through in our relationship is very different from when I am well mentally and when I am unwell mentally. She is the same person, but due to my mental health, I sometimes treat her differently. I am grateful that when I am unwell, she remains neutral and doesn't judge any of my words or actions in a negative way or take it personally. This allows me to heal quicker because I feel supported and not judged, and we can move forward and not dwell. For my sister, it can be exhausting, but because we have a loving and supportive relationship, she understands that it is not a forever situation, and on both sides, it's about give and take. And sometimes we understand that one person is giving more than the other, and vice versa.
That was a really interesting explanation from Asha on, you know, there's that sort of complexity between having a mental illness that impacts relationships, and then your relationships impacting your mental illness. And then you were saying, like, on top of of that already exists for most people, really. We've got COVID, like a pandemic. How's your sort of feelings around how the changing of daily life that the pandemic has produced? How's that impacted relationships?
Before COVID, I was more kept to myself and didn't contact family members and stuff. But since COVID, more family members have contacted me and offered help with this, that, and the other. I think it's actually brought me closer to them.
Right. Yeah.
Even though it's a terrible thing, it's actually had a positive effect because it's got me talking to people that I wouldn't normally have phoned up. But I'm phoning them because I'm worried about them, how they're coping with COVID, and they're phoning me. And I've had a lot of help from people. Do you want some shopping done? And and I've decided to accept help more. Whereas before I'd be like, no, I'll do it myself, I'm fine. Yeah, so it's actually made me more receptive to help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really interesting, because that was one of the biggest things from COVID, the sort of, even though there is this notion that we're all in together, we're all experiencing it, but everyone's experiencing it very differently. I think it really had people kind of realised that actually there are people whose life circumstances are, you know, much more sort of precarious than ours, and you know, we need to kind of look out for each other, because I think when you've got a culture that kind of looks down on people they perceive to be, that word vulnerable is not, then sometimes for you to ask to help can make you feel more. But when something shifts and we realise there's a precarity, like actually we're all precarious now because of this virus, some people are more precarious, something has changed, that it's quite respectable to say, I need some help, because we all need.
And I think there's a bit more empathy, and the COVID is kind of been a bit of an equaliser. Like, whereas I'd be anxious all the time without COVID, people are more anxious because of COVID. So it's sort of
that's so interesting, isn't it? Yeah. It's almost like join the club.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned that on the first video. We were talking about changes in routine, and I've got a number of joint conditions, and my limitations for doing lots of things has been sort of reduced over a period of time, and then also not knowing when or if you're going to get the right healthcare. But that's kind of, everyone's been limited now. You can't do all the things you want to do, and there is a concern, if you do get unwell, can they help you? So it's that strain.
I think like people have more understanding of people that had limitations because of their mental health condition. Now other people that haven't got a mental health condition will understand a bit more what it's actually like to be restricted because of something out of your control.
Out of your control, you're right, because often people kind of pull up your bootstraps. How did you get in this situation? And when people realise it doesn't really operate like that, and we're all vulnerable to ending up in any given situation. So that I guess that's changed. So the COVID has changed relationships quite profoundly then, in how we all see each other, and how your relations are seeing you. I think being in the house with people for a long time has been quite interesting, and then so many world events going on. I think for me it's been intense and dynamic time, and also because there's a pace of slowing down as well, and also certain things that I noticed and was concerned about that often had been invalidated. Actually now everyone's noticing and concerned about them. So for me there was a real, actually I am right. There was something, because in my sort of circumstances a lot I'd kind of been for a very long period of time, told that things that I felt strongly about, they weren't things. So I'm not going to go into too much detail, but maybe some of you out there might be thinking, oh, it was good to see the world shifting, and hopefully it can continue to move in a way that I think allows us to think a little bit more deeply about all different relationships. One of the things we were just chatting about before we did the video, and this is quite topical, is Keanu West, because he's been sort of in a process of whether we sort of call it mania. He understands himself to suffer from bipolar, but there seems to be a lot of stuff that's gone on for quite a long time in Keanu's relationships. He's sort of married to a very, I'd say, high profile family. I was going to say a high profile person, but he's married to a high profile family that seem to be very all encompassing, and very sort of social media savvy, and they control their image quite tightly. And now this is somebody who's pushing out. One of the statements he recently gave was from that film. He feels like he's in Get Out. What's your feeling on that? Like, you know, with...
I think it'll be different for everybody. I think that being in a good relationship is great, and if you then have a mental health condition, it could muddy the waters in a relationship.
Yeah.
But also, if you have a bad relationship, then that can make your mental health condition worse. Or the relationship could be the cause of your mental health condition. So they kind of link in a vice versa way.
Yes, definitely. There's a term now that's been bounded about a lot called gaslighting. Have you heard of it?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's when a person's reality, it can be the person that they're living with, or another family member, sort of questions their reality. And it came from a film, it's a 1940s film, I think. And Ingrid Bergman, I think so. So basically she was living in a house, and her husband kept on moving things around and putting down the lights, and every time she questioned that something was happening, he'd say, no, you're imagining it. So it was slowly to make her, lose her sanity, and the idea was so that he could get money off her. These are big topical things. I guess we can talk about them, and maybe sometimes it's easier to talk about people in the public eye, sometimes to talk about personal things.
Okay, so the next bit we're going to do is a little exercise, and here's me doing my version of this exercise. And in this exercise we're going to be you in the middle and thinking about the different relationships you have. So I've put my friends, I've put health professionals, and I've put family. And with those I have a face to symbolize what kind of how I feel about those relationships. So I've got a smiley face with my friends. I've got a bit detached with health professionals, and detached with family. And there's me in the middle. So there's mine. And you can have a go at doing that for yourselves.
Yeah, and I suppose you can make it as elaborate. It's funny, I started doing mine with sort of at the top here. I seem to just sort of go around. You've got to do it whatever way. It seemed to flow like my partner, my daughter, and then friends, and then it sort of went round to doctors, physio. And then I sort of thought, well, sometimes, like, we also have relationships with the media, or books, or work, or study. So I didn't necessarily intend on putting that in there, but there is a sort of loose relationship about certain things. how you respond to the news or things that you listen. So that might come into it. You don't have to do that, but that was just something that I just saw it happened as I went round. It seemed to sort of come in there. Funnily enough, maybe it's they become more detached because it's partner, daughter, mother, and then you're sort of doctor, physio. So there's just something about, maybe as you were saying, detached. Something about that went round there as well. And I haven't put the smiley faces because I was thinking, like for example, my dog Rusty is a big smiley face, but at 3:30 in the morning when he wakes up, it's not a big smiley face. So it changes at different times of the day. So so my daughter, when she has a nightmare at 3 in the morning, I'm less pleased to see her than I guess I was always thinking that they're not always happy and smiling. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's not so great. So I guess it can be a little bit more. You can think about that. So it's a bit. So that's what happened. Again, it was sort of spontaneous because they're interesting things. When you start doing them, it's things come out. Yeah. And as Nana said, when we had the Zoom session, if you have a chance to get around to doing your wheel, then maybe we can think about what come up. Did you think about the detached before you wrote it down, or did it come up?
I thought about it because I was trying to find a emotion word, and I thought, well, I don't really feel any emotions, or I don't allow myself to. I just sort of put on a false mask sort of thing, like, oh yes, everything's fine. And I think that's to do with the mental health side.
Yeah.
And so I detach, meaning not close to, and feeling like I should be close to, but I'm not. So I just pretend to be, but I'm not actually feeling anything.
And it's always quite a dynamic thing, isn't it? And then we can, what's happening, that you sort of feel you've got to protect yourself in those spaces.
I think it is a protection side, like pull down the shutters sort of thing, and just smile and pull down the shutters and don't really express myself. Sort of like to keep the peace, I suppose. Yeah. And it's protection because I don't really feel they're going to be receptive to what I've got to say, really. So it's better I don't say anything.
Yes, that's a massive thing. I think a lot of people will probably, that's a huge thing. Yeah, I'm sort of mindful to open too much up here, because that's maybe when we're in the Zoom and it's in that sort of a little bit more of a confined private space. If anybody has sort of felt, because sometimes these things occur to you that they haven't occurred to you, and like when we sort of mentioned the little safe unsafe relationships at Asha, if you suddenly go, oh I do, and it didn't occur to you before that you were doing something, sometimes that's a bit of a surprise or a shock. So if you do feel unsettled at any point, you can always speak to somebody here, or there's the crisis line, or we will put contacts on at the end. And when we talked about people who made us feel safe, maybe that can be a technique to ground us as well. I wonder, maybe we should sort of finish up on that, thinking about people who we feel positive around.
In my wheel, I have written about friends, and I feel, or one particular friend, I feel very safe with him. I know I can talk about whatever I want to talk about, and he'll understand and not judge. So that is a friendship that I want to continue, and I value it more than the others, even though family seems like it should be the most valuable thing. My friendship is more of value to me.
Yeah, I think it's often that way, isn't it? Family's tricky. Families can be very tricky. There's lots of sort of patterns of behaviour that gets passed down. I think I have some really good female friends, but I only kind of met them later in life. So that's an interesting thing, and maybe again in our Zoom we can expand, but it's really grounding to have people, you know, who you can, like you say, you can be yourself with.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah, you can just be yourself. Yeah, and it helps to sort of accept yourself, myself.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you find this interesting and you think, gosh, we'd like to be involved in our bigger workshop in October, and you know, pop us an email and you know, let us know.
Thank you for watching on behalf of myself, Nana and Siobhan. Again, a quick reminder that in the description box we have a list of resources as well as a link to the feedback form and the Zoom sessions. If you would like to join the longer version of this course, please email us and we will put you on the list. Thanks again and take care.